Hello, and thank you for joining us for establishing a NAGPRA data management system for museums. I am Claire Wilbert. I'm an associate with Bernstein and Associates, NAGPRA Consultants, and I am joined today by Jane.
Hi, my name is Jane Richardson, and I'm also an associate of Bernstein Associates, NAGPRA Consultants. This training will discuss how best to establish and maintain a robust data management system as part of compliance with the Native American Grace Protection and Repatriation Act, also known as NAGPRA.
This training will cover elements of the data management system that we have developed over decades and that we've seen successfully implemented by museums of all sizes. We will review best practices for naming protocols, as well as how to personalize the system to fit your institution's needs.
We implemented this data management system because the institutions we work for are considered museums as defined in NAGPRA, and therefore must comply with the Act and its implementing regulations. Proof of NAGPRA compliance must be maintained as cited in 43 CFR 10.10 F1, in which museums and federal agencies must adopt internal procedures adequate to permanently document the content and recipients of all repatriations. But it's important to keep in mind what information is written down that can become available to the public. As stated in 43 CFR 10.10 F2, the museum official or federal agency official may take such steps as are considered necessary to ensure that information of particularly sensitive nature is not made available to the general public. So it's important to keep in mind that not everything needs to be written down, and there's more room for museums and tribes to exercise discretion in what is maintained. For tribes, this is not required by law, but we recommend that they institute a policy regarding NAGPRA files so that they may have intellectual control over what's been done in the past. And also because of the possibility that personnel will always change, there needs to be a system built in to maintain that documentation.
The data management system will be used daily by the person or people responsible for NAGPRA implementation at your institution, both as they actively file new material and to refer to past work. A properly implemented data management system will also allow for systematic filing both within an individual project and across projects, making it easy to identify specific pieces of information. Additionally, it allows for transparency between institutions and the tribes they're working with. For instance, if a tribe loses their data regarding NAGPRA compliance with your institution, you can easily share all of your records related to your work with that tribe. It's also easy to navigate. Regardless of personnel change or filing protocols that a single person wants to implement, everyone on the team who needs access will be able to easily and quickly locate documentation that they need as they work to implement NAGPRA at your institution.
There are two major categories of files: archival and active or working files. Archival files are those to which no additional materials will be added. They document past activities. Active files are files to which documents will continue to be added. An example of an archival file is documentation of ancestral remains that have been repatriated and physically transferred. An example of an active file would be the set of tribal files maintained for each of the tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations with which the institution has been in contact with. Open grant files are considered to be active files, but when a grant closes, the file becomes an archival file. This does not happen to tribal files because they're considered always active. Institutions have future NAGPRA cases and so will continuously correspond with tribal reps. For file locations, the digital files we work with are stored onto Dropbox, an online shared drive, and the client has full access to these files. Locations of paper files may vary, and our recommendation is that they're never just accessible to one person.
There are 6 main components to the data management system. The first is your NAGPRA implementation tracking tool. The second is dedicated to the inventory provision, NAGPRA Section 5. The third part is the summary provision. The fourth is consultation and communication files. The fifth is grant files, should you have any of those. And then the sixth are the scanning protocols that you'll develop. The first piece of your NAGPRA data management system is your NAGPRA implementation tracking tool. And this is set up in a spreadsheet program. We recommend using something like Excel as opposed to a web-based platform such as Google Sheets, because you want to ensure that you have a consistently stable and usable document. And we have run into issues with web-based spreadsheet programs. So we recommend avoiding them unless there are very compelling reasons within your institution to use them. And the example of the tracking tool headers that we have here comes from the inventory provision tracker. A similar tracker will be set up to assist you with your summary provision compliance. But in this case, this is related to the inventory provision, and you can tell because it includes columns for the minimum number of individuals as well as the number of associated funerary objects. And you use the implementation tracking tool throughout project implementation because this is where you record your NAGPRA compliance milestones. So you will include, as you can see here on the bottom row of headers, the date on which you submit your inventory to the National NAGPRA program. And the National NAGPRA program administers NAGPRA on behalf of the Secretary of the Interior. You would also then include when you submit your notice, as well as the date that you distribute your notice publication announcement. And one of the wonderful things about this tracking tool is that it lets you see at a glance where you are on any individual project, as well as get a holistic view of where your institution is in terms of its NAGPRA implementation. And so this can be a wonderful way to share high-level information with administration or other stakeholders who will need to be notified periodically of your NAGPRA implementation progress.
The inventory provision of NAGPRA, Section 5, pertains to ancestral remains and associated funerary objects. The inventory provision folder is organized by state, if there are multiple states, and then organized by county, if there are multiple counties. If the geographic location is vague, then it's organized by cultural group or region. If we're unsure of the location, we'll put Z as for Z unknown. Within one of these county folders, there are 4 to 5 subfolders. It starts with consultation, and then an inventory folder, a notice folder, and if the individual is considered to be culturally unidentifiable, we'll have a 43 CFR 10.11 compliance folder. And then we also have a transfer of control and custody.
As Jane mentioned, the first folder is the consultation folder. And as you're looking at this and the following slides, we've used colors to identify which items are folders or subfolders and which items are documents. Items identified in blue are folders or subfolders. Items identified in green are documents. And another quick way to tell that is that the documents have the file extension identified as well. So within the consultation folder, this is where we include consultation invitations and the work related to the distribution of those. It allows us to track who has been invited to consultation events specifically, as well as the documents that were sent out with those invitations. Communications and documents related to consultation with a specific tribe are not stored in this folder, and we will address how to file those later in this training.
In the inventory provision section, we'll also include the inventory folder. And in that folder will include documents such as the inventory with the location and state abbreviation in parentheses, as well as the date we submitted that inventory to National NAGPRA. We'll also include an amended inventory if needed with the same location, state abbreviation, and the date submitted to National NAGPRA. We'll also have in that folder an inventory prep folder, and in that we'll have the collection documentation, which is all the documentation used to create the inventories.
The third folder is related to the notice publication. And this folder will change substantially over the course of your project. Initially, you will be recording all of your notice drafts. And we recommend, as you can see here, naming these documents with a capital N for hashtags or pound signs and draft 1. The reason for this is that National NAGPRA will provide you with a notice ID number, which is an N followed by 4 digits. So this allows you to easily go back and rename draft notices to reflect those temporary ID numbers, which you will need to reference in any correspondence with the National NAGPRA program related to that notice. Additional drafts have the same naming convention. And once you have your notice published, which is always a wonderful milestone to reach, you will put all of those drafts in a drafts folder and save a PDF of the published notice under the Federal Register citation. Additionally, as you prepare your notice publication announcement, we recommend including a folder dedicated to that work, which might include distribution lists or mailing labels in the event that you need to distribute the notification via the Postal Service.
We'll also include the 43 CFR 10.11 compliance folder if the individuals are considered culturally unidentifiable. And in that, we'll have the Aboriginal Territory Research Disposition folder, the disposition offer letter and agreement, and any signed disposition agreements that we send out to the tribes. And in that folder, we'll include the file name of whether the tribe requested, supported, or deferred disposition and the date that they signed that document. Lastly, we'll also include the transfer of control and custody. And so even though there is a repatriation request document, that's only if the individual is considered culturally affiliated, not culturally unidentifiable. And then we'll have the transfer of control and transfer of custody documents and have those dated to when they were signed. And if the tribe would like the museum to temporarily hold the individuals until they're ready for reburial, we'll have them sign a care and trust agreement.
Sometimes you may be called upon to undertake additional activities for specific projects, such as assisting with determining reburial planning or activities of that sort. And if that's the case, we recommend creating a separate folder to house documents related to that part of the process. And as Jane has mentioned earlier, always keep in mind what needs to be recorded and what doesn't. Freedom of Information Act requests, additional state or local laws that would require information sharing. All of those things should be considered and discussed before you include documents that may include sensitive information in your data management system.
The summary provision of NAGPRA, Section 6, pertains to unassociated funerary objects, sacred objects, and objects of cultural patrimony. We'll include in this folder the summary folder, which will include the summary document, and we like to put final once it's submitted to National NAGPRA, as well as a summary cover letter and the date that it was sent out. We'll also include the summary prep folder, which also includes the files that were created and the collection documentation that was used to create those summaries that were distributed to the tribes in National NAGPRA program. We'll also include a catalog number and item name folder in case after the summary is distributed, a tribe wants to consult on a specific item. And in that will include the consultation folder, which will include the consultation draft notes of that consultation between the tribe and the museum. Also in the summary provision folder, we'll have the repatriation and transfer documents. And in that we'll have the repatriation request and the tribe that requests repatriation in the file name for the folder repatriation transfer documents.
Since the summary process is claims driven, after the museum receives a repatriation request for a cultural item, they can develop the notice of intent to repatriate, which has its own folder similar to the notice of inventory completion folder that we set up for inventory projects. And the documents in this folder will follow a similar evolution, that initially you will only have your drafts, which again, we recommend naming so that they will be easily renamed when you receive your temporary tracking number from the National NAGPRA program. And again, once you submit that, and once it is finalized and published, all of the previous drafts will go into a drafts folder, and you will save the final PDF of the published notice under the Federal Register citation. Once the notice has been published, you will revisit the repatriation and transfer documents folder to add the necessary documents there. This might include a deaccession document that's required by your institution, as well as the transfer of control and custody documents that you will develop as you reach those points in the process. You might also need to include a list of items that are included in that repatriation and any other documents required by your institution to track the process. If we go all the way back up to the top level of your data management system, we find the Consultation and Communication folder. And this folder will have a number of primary subfolders depending on the scope of your institution's consultation and outreach. We recommend that each tribe or Native Hawaiian organization have a dedicated folder for all of your correspondence with that tribe or Native Hawaiian organization. And we further recommend that these individual tribe or Native Hawaiian organization folders are grouped by geographic region. And we have found that divisions based on geography, so Alaska, Hawaii, and the lower 48 states, are an intuitive format in which to quickly and easily locate an individual tribe's folder. You'll also want a primary subfolder for the National NAGPRA program, and this is where you will file your correspondence with them related to submission of documents. You'll also file their receipts of those submissions, as well as any other important correspondence that you have with them over the course of your NAGPRA implementation work. We also recommend having a folder dedicated to internal communication, and this is where you might file interdepartmental correspondence and things of that nature that you should maintain a record of for your institutional memory. You also might find yourself in a situation where you have split and shared collections, and if that's the case, we also recommend setting up dedicated folders for those institutions where you can record that correspondence as well. Within each of the tribe or Native Hawaiian organization folders, you will file all of the correspondence that you have with them. And we have found that the best way to name these documents so that you can quickly and easily, first of all, find a document that you're looking for, but also understand the flow and the history of your institution's contact with this particular tribe or Native Hawaiian organization. And our recommendation is to start every file name with a date, a 4-digit year, a 2-digit month, and a 2-digit day. And this allows for automatic sorting of documents chronologically. The rest of the file name is up to you, and it depends on what the specific document is that you're filing. So we recommend a quick, short, the subject of an email or a brief description. The only exception to this is that we recommend sticking to very clear and accurate descriptions of consultation invitations, consultation and grant partner invitations. Anything that would document a specific milestone of your NAGPRA implementation process should have a clear title related to that milestone.
When filing email correspondence, we recommend that you choose a PDF software that has the capability to combine attachments with the enclosing email into one PDF. And then we typically name the file, the date, the subject of that correspondence, and then in parentheses, attachments enclosed. If your PDF software does not have the capability to combine attachments with their enclosing emails, then we typically will name the files, the date, the subject of the correspondence, and then in parentheses, enclosing email, and then the attachment has the same date and subject of correspondence, except with parentheses, it has attachments. If there are multiple attachments, then we recommend including in that file name the number of attachments, such as 1 of 2 or 1 of 3, to keep track of them.
If you decide that you would like to apply for a grant to support your NAGPRA efforts, either a NAGPRA grant or another grant, we recommend setting up grant files in your data management system. And Primarily, each grant proposal that you draft will have two subfolders. The first will be your working documents folder. And this is where you compile all of the documentation that you need to prepare to submit your proposal. Once you have finalized your proposal and you have submitted it, we recommend saving that copy in the application folder. If and hopefully when you are awarded that grant, we also recommend setting up an administration folder for that grant, which might include the award announcement, the grant agreement, financials. If travel is included as part of that grant, it might make sense to set up a dedicated travel planning folder. All of your reports, modifications, and extensions that are required. And one thing to keep in mind is that as the Grant Solutions platform develops, you may not need to include all of these documents in your own internal administration folder, but that's a conversation to have with your institution and administration to ensure that you're meeting all of your internal record keeping needs outside of the Grant Solutions platform.
If you're going to be digitizing physical documents, it's important to create scanning protocols. And as you create these protocols, there are a few things you should consider, such as where are the digital files going? How much storage space do we have for these files? Are the files being saved on an external hard drive as well for a backup? And will the PDFs be searchable? In the scanning protocols that we've developed to create high-quality PDFs with searchable text, we found that setting the DPI to 300 for optimal OCR results is best, and this can be adjusted as needed depending on the type of document and where it's going to be kept. And unless the paper is highly colored or contains information that will be lost if not kept in color, set the color setting to 16-bit grayscale. Also, it's best to name the scanned documents appropriately and save them to the proper folder as you scan them. As we've been maintaining and building our data management system, we've come across a few issues. One being broken links that can happen when creating shortcuts. We recommend avoiding creating any type of shortcut to your files because if you rename that file or move it, the shortcut is then broken and you can no longer access the file from that shortcut. We also recommend creating standard naming protocols. So avoid naming the file names too long because, for instance, for PCs, there are character limits, and if the file name is too long, you'll no longer be able to access that file.
As you work to establish a data management system for your institution, if you're in the very lucky position of just starting on your institutional NAGPRA implementation journey, think about your data management system and the big picture before you start working on a data management system piecemeal. What are your institutional needs? Are there ways that the templates and examples that we've shared need to be adapted to meet those needs? We also recognize that very few institutions are likely to be at the very beginning of their NAGPRA implementation journeys, in which case you'll most likely be adapting an existing system. So in that case, think about the parts of that existing system that work very well. And there likely are aspects of your data management system that you love. Then also consider those elements that need a few tweaks to be the best they can be. And then maybe there are also parts that just need to be completely overhauled. And as much as it is possible, try not to do this work in a vacuum. Work with colleagues, see if they can easily navigate the system. Think both about your future self a year from now. Can you easily find a document? But also think about the person who will replace you in 10 years. And bear in mind that if you can't easily find a document, there's no way that they'll be able to find it. You may also find it useful as a gift to yourself and future colleagues to develop a manual to help guide and ensure compliance with all of these aspects of your data management system to make sure that everyone is using it the same way and ensuring that it continues to be useful every day of your NAGPRA implementation journey.
Thank you for joining us in this training.
and we wish you well on every aspect of your NAGPRA journey.